Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's technical mathematics lesson. My name is Matsiriso Kongwani. This lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Center. Remember, grade 12, our WhatsApp number is 079-578-2908. I'm repeating the number, 079-578-2908. You are more than welcome to send the clarity-seeking questions to that particular number or any alternative solution that you'd like to share with us. Okay, grade 12. Today we are looking at algebra. We are revising equations, inequalities, logarithms, exponents, and sets. Remember, the algebra is 50 plus minus 3 on your paper 1. That means out of the 150 marks of your paper 1, the 50 marks is for the algebra. Therefore, grade 12, this algebra plays a major role on ensuring that you pass your paper 1. Now, by the end of this particular lesson, you should be able to, number 1, to apply the laws of exponents and logarithms to expressions and equations, and then to add, subtract, multiply, and divide sets. Thirdly, to solve quadratic equations by factorization and by using quadratic formula. Lastly, to solve equations with two variables, one being a linear and the other one being a quadratic. We are talking our simultaneous equations, grade 12. Okay, now before we can start with the lesson, I would like you to complete this baseline assessment. I am giving you only 3 minutes, grade 12, to go through this baseline assessment. We are testing our exponential laws and the logarithmic laws, therefore, so that we can be able to continue with today's revision lesson. So your 3 minutes, grade 12, start now. Okay, grade 12, let's see how much do you remember in terms of your laws, and then starting with the exponential laws. Now, remember now, the notation, if you have a to the power x, therefore this a represents the base, and then the x represent the exponent, okay? And the whole expression is now your power. So now this is the language that we will be using now and then. So for the 1.1 there, we are multiplying the same base. As you can see, we have a base there. So this rule says that if you multiply the same base, you write this as a single base, and then now you add exponent. That means it will be x plus y. So that is how you apply rule 1.1. And then 1.2, if you subtract same base, if you divide, same base, you subtract exponent. That means we are going to note this as a single base a, and then now since we are dividing, we will be subtracting our exponents. Okay, and then now the third one, we are having base a and base b. We have two bases now, but these bases, they share the same exponent m because they are covered by a bracket there. That means now each and every base will take this exponent, okay? And also b will be b to the power n. Can you see, grade 12? You can separate this with a multiplication sign because you are multiplying, and then base a will be a to the power m and also b to the power m. 1.4 is a continuation of this one now. More application on that. If you have a to the power m, remember each will also take this exponent. It will go to that one and also go to that. Because we are having a bracket there, therefore we will be multiplying. So it will be a to the power m. Remember, it is now bringing in also exponent p there. And then multiply by b to the power n, it will also take exponent p because they are both sharing that exponent p. And then 1.5, we have base a over b, and then each base here will take the exponent x. Therefore, now this will be a to the power x over b to the power x. Can you see, grade 12? Each base is taking that particular exponent there. And then now any number to the power 0, a to the power 0, any number to the power 0 is equals to 1. 1,000, as long as you are raising that to the power 0, it will be 1. 1 million, as long as you are raising to the power 0, it is equals to 1. Any number raised to the power 0 is equals to 1. And then 1.7, now, if you are having negative exponent, this can be written as 1 over a. Now look at the exponent now. It is now becoming positive n. Okay, now, the minute it forms a fraction, grade 12, it is now becoming a negative exponent, a positive exponent. You can even say, remember, if there's no denominator, this is over 1. So it's like we have taken a to the denominator there. The minute they move from numerator to denominator, it changes the exponent sign. So our exponent was negative. Since it moves to the denominator, then we are having a positive exponent. On top, then we will be left with the coefficient of a, of which is 1. Okay, and then now moving to the logarithms law. If you are having the log of x times y to the base a, and then this was initially the log of x plus the log of y. And the base for both will be the same a because they come from the same log. Vice versa, if you are given log x plus log y, you can write it as log x times y base a, okay? And then with the second one, if you are dividing there, that means initially it was the log of x minus the log of y. And then this is sharing base b, both from log of base b. Same grade 12, if it is written like that, you can even reverse it to its original. And then 2.3, this is playing a major role, grade 12, on your logarithms. If you're having an exponent there, this exponent now, the rule allows you to take the exponent to be the coefficient there. Then it will be m log of x with base a. So you can play around. You can take this m back to its exponent. You can take it from exponent to the coefficient then. That is the third rule of logs there. And then 2.4, the log of a base a. As long as this part is exactly the same, then this is equals to 1. Log 10 base 10 equal to 1. Log 100 base 100 is equals to 1. And then the log of 1, grade 12, you can even check with your calculator. It will give you a 0. So log of 1 is always a 0. It doesn't matter how much it's a base. Even if I can have the log of 1 with the base of 100 there, it will still give me a 0 because it's a log of 1. Okay. And then now with quadratic or literal equations now, with the quadratic equations, we are having an original equation that is quadratic. How do we know this is a quadratic equation? It must be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. It is quadratic because it is to the power 2. That is why they say a cannot be a 0, grade 12. If a becomes 0 there, it will cancel this part and then you'll be left with bx plus c. This will no more be a quadratic equation because to be quadratic, you need exponent 2 there. That is why we have this restriction that is restricting that a cannot be 0, but b can be a 0 and c can also be a 0. Okay. And then now out of this equation, we came up with the quadratic formula. The maths learners, they are the ones who completed a square to find out this quadratic formula for us using the quadratic equation. And then our quadratic formula, grade 12, you'll find this at the back of your question paper. It states that x is equal to minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now, the mistake that you do mostly on the notation of this grade 12, please ensure that you double check at the back of your question paper. Instead of starting this division line from minus b, you sometimes only write it there below the b squared minus 4ac. Please ensure that it starts from the minus b. Secondly, there must be this minus b there. And then there must be a plus minus, meaning there are two solutions for this. And then now, when you substitute, ensure that you put bracket on B, put a bracket on A, and the bracket on C, and also the bracket on that denominator A. If you have started by doing this grade 12, I don't think you can go wrong. Okay, so let's guard against such particular mistakes. And then now let's start with our activity now. The first one, we are solving for x, grade 12. Remember, our original equation is saying ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to a 0. Look at this now. We solved this. Why? Because it is equals to a 0 then. If you look at 1.1, yes, it is already equals to a 0. If that is the case, and then we have bracket on the left, that means these are vectors. But you must ensure that there's a 0 on the right-hand side before you conclude those are vectors. If there are vectors, grade 12, there is no need for you to multiply out the bracket. The first x is equals to 0, straight to the solution, or the 5 minus x bracket is equals to 0. So that means you are going to say x is equal to 0 and the 5 minus x is equals to 0. And then for the second one now, 5 is equal to your x when you take it to that side. That is the solution. That is why it's 2 marks is x equal to 0 and x equals to 5 as your solution. And then 1.2, let's check now. Is the right-hand side equal to 0? Yes, it is equal to 0. The left-hand side, I have bracket, therefore these are factors. No need to multiply out if you have factors grade 12. We are going to take them as they are now. And then we are having 2x plus 4 into x minus 3 equals to 0. The first bracket, 2x plus 4, will be equal to 0, or the second bracket, x minus 3, will be equal to 0. Therefore, 2x is equals to 4 to this side is minus 4. Divide both sides by 2. Then x will be equal to a negative 2. Or x is equals to minus 3 to that side will be a positive 3. It is also 2 marks grade 12. Therefore, we allocate marks only for the final solution for that problem. Okay. And then with 1.3 now, we are given x squared. Solving x squared equal to 13x. And then grade 12, if you look at this one now, look at the right-hand side, it is 13x. There is no way you can conclude your solution. Number 2, the mistake that you do is that you divide by x both sides. That is not allowed, grade 12. If it says x squared, it means you are having 2 solutions. So the minute you divide by x now, you are cancelling one solution. You'll be left with only one solution for this problem. Do not divide by x variable. Okay, so what are we going to do now? Remember, we must have a 0 on the right hand side. Therefore, we'll transpose 13x to the left. It will be x squared. Then this becomes minus 13x equals to a 0. Okay, and then now we can now take out the common x because you have x and x there. And this will be x. So from x squared, when you take out 1x, then we will remain with 1x there. And then we take out x there being common from minus 13, we'll be left with minus 13 equals to a 0. Therefore, the first x here will be equal to 0, or the bracket of x minus 13 will be equal to 0. Therefore, x is equal to minus 13 to the side. It's a positive 13 grade 12. This is 4 marks. That means 1 mark will be for transposing correctly, correct sign. Second mark will be for the factors. The third mark will be for the first x value, and the fourth mark for the second x value, hence the 4 mark allocation there. Right. And then grade 12, you can also use your quadratic formula to factorize. Remember, when you are at this stage of x squared minus 13x equal to 0, remember the value next to x squared is your a value. In this case, it's 1. Then a will be 1. And then now the b value is the value that is next to x. Then it's minus 13. And then the c value is the value without an x, of which in this case we do not have a value there. Therefore, c will be equals to a 0. Then you can take your quadratic formula and substitute. It's a negative by minus 13b there, plus minus square root of b squared minus 13 squared minus 4. A is equals to 1, and the c is a 0 there. Remember, this division line is up to the last point, the division line up to the square root sign also up to 0, and then this is 2 into 1. And then into your calculator, you'll end up with the same answers, x equal to 0 or the x equals to 13. Remember, grade 12, we are having 2 solutions there. You must check the positive part and the negative part of your solution. I hope we are still together on that one. That means now, if it is not a factor, you can use your quadratic formula, right? Okay. And then 1.4, we are given 2x squared minus 2 equal to 0. And then in this case, grade 12, you can divide throughout by 2 because it is possible. And then now when you divide by 2, it will be left with 1x squared. Divide by 2 minus 1 0 divided by 2 is still a 0. And then this type of factorization is the difference of two squares. Remember, 1 squared is also 1. That is why they wrote a 1 there. So now we are going to share this equally now. You'll be having x. We are sharing this x equally. We share 1 squared equally 1, 1. And then one bracket will be negative, the other one positive, because we are factorizing difference of two squares. Then the first bracket will give you x equals to 1. The second bracket will be x equal to a minus 1. So grade 12 now, let's say you decided to use a quadratic formula. This will be your a value. And remember, the b value must be the coefficient of x. If you look here, we don't have x. That means the b will be equal to 0 because there is no b there. And then the c will be a minus 2. A is equal to 2 there. Okay. And then now you can go to your quadratic formula. X is equal to minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And then this is minus, how much is b? 0 plus minus, your b is 0, grade 12, minus 4, your a is 2, and then your c is minus 2. All over 2a is equals to 2. Into your calculator, you will still get your x being 1 or x being a negative 1. Remember now, b can be 0 and c can be 0, but your a will never ever be 0. Okay. And then allocation of marks now, it will be 1 mark for simplifying into that, second mark for factors, the third mark for your x values, grade terms. Okay. And then now we are still on solving for x now. We are trying to unfold different types of equations to you. Remember now, 1 or 2 of them are already on your paper, grade 12. In all your papers, you will be having this type of questions, 2 of them. The first one is with factors, the other one is strictly quadratic formula. All right. And then now let's look at 1.5 here. Look at that. Remember, standard form says ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. Is this the correct standard form? No. It must start with x squared. We take it with its sign positive, x squared, and then plus 9x. And then we take 10 to that side, it's minus 10. Why? Because we want a 0 on the right-hand side. And then from here, grade 12, now you can go your quadratic, it's fine. A is equals to 1, and the B is equals to 9, and the C is equal to minus 10. Then this will be x equal to minus B is 9. It's a negative from the formula, plus minus the square root, B is 9 squared minus 4, A 1, and then C is minus 10. All over 2 into 1. Okay, that is our 1.5. And then the first x value there will be x equal to minus 2 or x equals to a 3. Okay, those are the factors of this particular problem. Okay, it's supposed to be x equal to minus 10 here, grade 12. A mistake on the calculator, x is minus 10, and the x equals to positive 1. It must be minus 10 and positive 1 there, the correct factors, grade 12, because we are looking for factors of 10. When you subtract, you get a 9. It must be x plus 10 and the x minus 1. These are the correct factors, grade 12. Sorry for that. Let me rectify this again. It's x equal to minus 10 or x equals to a positive 1. These are the correct factors. And then now the first mark will go for transposing correctly there and arranging in the standard form. Start with the x squared x and the constant number. The second mark will be for substituting correctly into the correct formula, and the third mark for your first x value, and the fourth mark for the next x value there. Okay, and then now let's move on to 1.6 grade terms. And then with 1.6 now, remember, yes, you have a 0 on the right hand side, but we cannot say this affects us because there's a 3 there that is disturbing us. So now this 3 is causing us to multiply out bracket. That is only when that you can multiply bracket. So this will be x squared, x times x squared, x times minus 1 is minus x, minus 4 times x minus 4x, minus 1 and minus 4 will be minus 5x. And the negative 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. And then minus 3 equals to 0. So this is x squared minus 5x plus 1 equals to 0. Can you see we are looking for factors of 1? When you add, you get a minus 5. That is highly impossible. That means this is telling you that you need to use a quadratic form. That is why next to your question, you'll be having a message that is saying correct to 2 decimal places. You must know that you are forced to use a quadratic formula, the grade 12. Therefore, this is x is equal to minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So it's a negative from the formula there. And then b comes with a negative 5 again, plus minus square root of the b is minus 5 squared minus 4. The a is 1, the c is 1 there. And then this is 2 into 1. And then now everything into your calculator, grade 12 to a simple set form, it will be 5 plus minus the square root of 21 over 2. And then your SD pattern, and this will be in decimal form. X equals to 2 decimal places is 4,79, or x is equals to 0.21. Okay, these are the factors for this particular quadratic formula. And then now allocation of marks. Number 1 is for multiplying your bracket correctly and end up with a quadratic formula. Second mark for substitution. The third mark for the x value. Fourth mark for another x value there. So that is your allocation of marks, your 4 marks grade 12. And then now number 5, we are looking for factors of 5. When you add them, they give you 4. Highly impossible grade 12. That means it is also calling for some rounding off a quadratic formula. It's a must for this one. So now we are having a equals to 1, the b equals to 4, and the c equals to 5 then. And then this is x equal to minus our b is 4 plus minus. Remember, grade 12, you start by writing your quadratic formula first before you substitute, okay? And then now the b is 4 squared minus 4a is 1 and c is 5 there. And then everything 2 into 1. And then now grade 12, when you put this into your calculator is saying error. Remember, your calculator is not on a complex mode, right? It's on a degree mode. So when you put this in your calculator and it shows error, then you need to check inside the bracket. It might be the square root of a negative number. Now with your TechMath, you'll be bringing in your complex calculations now. Then this one is giving us minus 4 plus minus the square root of negative 4 over 2. Can you see the complex now? Because we are having the square root of a negative 4. Maybe now we can answer this completely by bringing in our complex numbers. Then it will be minus 4 plus minus the square root of 4 times negative 1 over 2. And then remember, this will be minus 4 plus minus square root of 4 is 2. And then we are left with square root of minus 1. over 2. Do you still remember grade 12? With this one, you must write it as minus 4 plus minus 2i over 2. And then divide by 2 on that one. 2 into minus 4, it will be minus 2 plus minus, and then 2 into 2i. Can you see your answer will be complex answer now? Okay, do not write an error here, grade 12. Your calculator, yes, will show an error, but to you, it is telling you that check inside your square root sign. If the number is negative, that means you are bringing in your complex numbers. So the first mark will be for substitution, the second mark for showing that the square root is negative, and the final answer is for your 2 solutions there. Therefore, this will worth 4 marks. And then now grade 12, there is your activity. I am giving you 5 minutes to do this activity. And then after 5 minutes, we will be reflecting back on this particular activity. Your 5 minutes starts now. Okay, grade 12, let's see how many marks can you get out of these 6 marks. Remember to send your clarity seeking question to our WhatsApp number 079 578 2908. Okay, let's look at the first problem. Remember the method. Check. Is it right hand side equal to a 0? Yes, happy. It is equal to a 0. Check. Left hand side, do we have brackets for factors? No, we don't have. Okay, and then if that is the case, then you can check your A value, your B value. Do you have the C, grade 12? C, remember it's a number without X? No, therefore there will be X equal to, it was supposed to be there, remember? And then now we can go to our quadratic formula. X is equal to minus B plus minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. And then this is minus from the formula, a negative from the formula, and the negative for B there. And then plus minus, the B is negative 3 squared minus 4A is 1 and C is 0 there. And then everything over 2A is 1. And then into your calculator, straight to the answer, the first X value will be X equals to 0, and the second one will be X equals to 3 grade 12. And then for those who are more smarter now, who can see that there is a common factor between X squared and minus 3X there, they can take out a common X and be left with X minus 3 equal to 0. And the first X there will be equal to 0, and the X for the bracket will be equal to 3. So, but eventually grade 12, you'll end up with the same mark. That is 1 mark for the factor and 1 mark for both correct X values. So the one who used the quadratic formula will get 1 mark for substituting correctly into quadratic formula. That is for the factor mark. And then now for the values of X, 1 mark for that. And then this is worth 2 marks. So it doesn't matter which method you use, grade 12 for that one. And then if you look at 1.2, there's a message there. That means this one, it is forcing you to use a quadratic formula. So now we have A value equal to 2 from there, and the B value, which is minus 3, and our C value is minus a half there. We are using the same quadratic formula, grade 12. Ensure that you copy it correctly from your formula sheet at the back of your question paper. Then this will be X. The formula is having a negative there, then we'll put that negative first, and then another negative from B, negative for B, and then plus minus the square root of B, which is minus 3 squared minus 4, the value of A, 2, the value of C, negative half. Remember, the division line must be up to the end there, the square root line, okay? And the division line also must start from there up to the end. And then this is 2 into 2 for the value of A. And then into your calculator, grade 12, to the answer. And then this will give you the simple set form will be 3 plus minus the square root of 13 over 4. And then now, in decimal form, it will be X equal to 1,65 to 2 decimal places, or X will be equal to negative 0,15 grade 12. That is 1 mark for substituting correctly into the correct formula. If it is worth 4 marks, that means the examiner is also giving a mark for a simple set form, and then for the first X value and for the next X value, then this problem is worth 4 marks. Okay, grade 12. I hope you managed to get all the marks out of 6. Now we move on to literal equations. What do we mean by literal equation? By literal equations, we mean equations that are composed of more than one variable. Remember, with them solving for X equations that we have done, they were only having variable X out. But with the literal, you'll be having more than 2 letters, 1 or 2 letters on your formula that is given to you. Now let's look at this one. the electric current, and this equation is grade 12. Thank you for getting that electric current. They will be mostly related to our trades. As you can see, this one is talking to electric current. That means it is related to the learners who are doing power systems and the electronics and power systems. Then they are mostly using this formula. So now that means now we are now bringing in your trade. That is the integration of TechMaths into your trades now. And then in some cases, we will also take formulae from the technical science. Okay. Now in this case, we are given that the electric current with the symbol I can be calculated by using the formula I is equals to capital E over the capital R plus the small r, where E represents the electromotor force and the R represents the internal resistance and the capital R represents the external resistance. And then now 2.1, we need to make R the subject of the formula. Therefore, we are given formula I is equals to the capital E over the capital R plus small r. So we need to make this R the subject of the formula, grade 12. That means to be subject of the formula, it must be the one in charge. So now what we are going to do is we are going to cross multiply this R to that point. So when we cross this, it will be R plus small r. And then on the right-hand side, we'll be having capital E over I. So they are just changing positions. That is cross multiplication. And then we need only the small r, not the capital one. So we are going to transpose this to the right-hand side because there's an addition sign there. So r will be left on that side. Then we have this capital E over capital I. And then now minus r now. Since r was positive there, it will change to a minus r. Then now this is 2 marks. So the first mark is for the cross multiplying, and then now for letting r being, small r being the subject of the formula. So that is worth 2 marks, grade 12. Continue to point 2, hence or otherwise. The word hence means using your previous answer. Otherwise, means you can even use your initial formula to answer this question, correct? And then calculate the internal resistance, of which we are calculating small r, given that the current I is 5 amperes and the electromotor force is 13.05 volts and the external resistance R is 2 ohms there. Okay, grade 12, you can take your formula R. If you are confident enough that it is correct, equal to E over I minus R. And then now let's substitute. What is E? Electromotor force, that is 13.05 over I, of which is the current. What is our current? 5 amperes. And then minus the external resistance, of which is 2. And then into your calculator, grade 12, straight to the answer. This is giving us 61 over 100 ohms. Or you can write this in decimal as 0.61 ohms. It's also okay. Okay, and then if another learner maybe decided to use, is not comfortable enough to use the answer from 2.1, decided to use the original equation as it is, I is equal to E over R plus small r, and then substituted the I, of which is 5, and substituted the electromotor force, of which is 13.05 over R for capital resistance 2, and then now plus the R here. And then now we cross multiply these two. It will be 2 plus R equal to 13.05 over 5. Can you see, grade 12? It gives you the same thing. 2 goes to that side. 13.05 over 5 minus 2. Can you see it's exactly the same as that step? Therefore, it will exert 0, ohms. The same solution. So now it's also 2 marks. It will be 1 mark for substitution and 1 mark for your answer, grade 12, the allocation of marks for the particular question. And then now, grade 12, I want you to try your luck now to answer this one on literal equations only now, to ensure that you really understand what do we mean by that. And then in this case, they say the formula used to determine the synchronous speed in revolution per minute is given below. That is ns, which is synchronous speed, is equal to 60 times f. Our f is for frequency, divided by p, and p is the number of poles. So the first question, 2.1, you need to make p the subject of the formula from the given formula then. And then number 2.2, hence calculate the numerical value of p if you are given that the synchronous speed is 540 revolution per minute with the frequency of 63 hertz, grade 12. Let's try this one within 3 minutes, grade 12. Your 3 minutes starts now. Okay, grade 12, I hope you are also sending your answers to 079-578-2908 or your clarity seeking questions to that particular number, grade 12. Right, now we need to make P the subject of the formula from our formula, and the synchronized speed is equal to 60 times the frequency over the number of poles. And then now, do you see grade 12, the same method? You must check if it's over 1, then you can cross multiply and interchange them by cross multiplication. So P will come to this side, and then on the right hand side, you'll have 60 times F over the synchronous speed. And then that is 1 mark for doing that, grade 12, because you only have to apply cross multiplication to get to the answer. And then now 2.2, hence. The minute it says hence, it says use the previous answer to answer this question, okay? So in this case, we are given NS being 540 and the frequency of 63 hertz there. So now we are using 2.1, of which is P equal to 60 times F over N S, which is synchronous speed. And then now P for number of poles will be 60 multiplied by the frequency of 63 all over the synchronous speed of 540 revolution per minute. And into your calculator, grade 12, straight to the answer. This is giving 7. Remember, this P represents the number of poles. Therefore, we have 7 poles. It's 1 mark for substitution and 1 mark for the answer. Hence, we have allocated 2 marks for that, grade 12. I hope you get these 3 marks, all of it. And now we are still on with inequality. Grade 12, you need to remember these are not equations, they are inequalities. That is that the inequalities, remember, with the equation, it's an equal sign. With inequalities, it is a greater than, a less than, a greater than or equal to, and then equal to. Not or, it must be greater and equal to, and then less and equal to. Okay, catering for both solution. We have greater than solution, then the equal to solution, the less than solution, and the equal to solution. This one is only the greater than, and that one is only the less one. Okay, now we have 2 notations on this. Sometimes they will say write in inequalities notation or in an interval notation, that like the June exam, the inequality that was asked, the learners were given that they must write their answer in interval notation. So if you write your answer in inequality, whereas the question says in interval notation, you will be penalized, grade 12. What do we mean by the inequality notation and the interval notation? What is the difference between the two? For this one, as you can see now, it is an open dot at 5. So if it's an open dot, that means there is no equal sign. That means the value is not part of the solution. It is not included in your solution, but it's everything that is greater than 5, because it is going to the greater than side, to the positive side. And then that is why we are having a notation that is greater. If you look at this inequality, it is following the direction of the arrow there, okay? That is greater than. And then now when talking to the interval notation, this side is for interval notation, this one is for inequality notation. So for the interval notation, now you start by indicating the bracket first. The bracket